What's up, y'all? It's your boy JTMM, aka Just 10 More Minutes, aka the Freaking 10. Back again with another one of Sabaton history, and this one's No Bullets Fly. This one's going to be emotional. I know it will be. You know, it's one when I first heard the song and just thinking about what's going through everybody's mind in that situation. It's extremely emotional. And then, of course, the reunion and all of that. Yeah, it just really got me. So I'm fully expecting this one to get me. But with that being said, let's switch it up. Let's check it out.
I'm Indy Nidell.
I'm Pat from Sabaton.
And this is Sabaton History. Even in the depths of the inhumanity of World War II, you still find stories of humanity and even honor between the two sides.
Yeah, and thanks to the American author Adam Marcus, we found out about the story about No Bullets Fly.
And that's a story I'm going to tell you right now, and then Para's going to tell you about the song.
It's hard to describe if you see an airplane that's so crippled, and for me it would have been the same as shooting at a parachute. I just couldn't shoot.
Okay, so that brings up an interesting question, right? Because, you know, and maybe they get into this later in the video, but my first thought is, you know, he said it would be the same thing as just shooting a parachute, which I'm sure other pilots did. But I'm wondering if he was in that other situation and nobody reported him, or what made this so unique, if it was just all found out. And I don't remember the exacts from the last one, but if, you know, if it didn't come out until later, I mean, obviously, you know, they didn't really see him doing this, or else he could have faced, you know, certain death going back. But yeah, that's just fascinating. We talks about it's the same as shooting a parachute. And I hadn't really thought about it like that. That's powerful. Wow.
December 20th, 1943. Days before Christmas, and snowflakes spatter the windshield of Ye Old Pub, an American B-17 bomber. Flying 20,000 feet above the North Sea, it's part of an 8-mile-long bomber stream on its way to northern Germany. Their target, a Focke-Wulf aircraft factory in the city of Bremen. Piloting a flying fortress, as the B-17s are known, for the first time is Charlie Brown, who has the lives of 10 young men of the 379th Bombardment Group in his hands. They ready their 12 500-pound bombs. This month, the Americans will drop over 2.6 million pounds of bombs onto German industrial and military targets. Shortly after 11 a.m., they cross the German border, nervously on the lookout for enemy fighters. Because if they can see Germany, so too can the German spotters see them and calculate their height, speed, and intended destination. Covering them as escorts are P-47 Thunderbolts, whose job it is to intercept the enemy. At 11:30, puffs of black smoke appear all over. German 88mm flak cannons are opening up, sending 20-pound shells into the air. Each has a differently timed fuse, so they explode at different altitudes. The explosions rock the pub, and Charlie can barely see a thing through the smoke. Suddenly, a red flash explodes right before his eyes. The plexiglass nose of the plane is sheared off and smashes against the windshield. The men up front are unhurt, but ice-cold winds now stream through the plane. The outside air temperature is minus 60 Celsius. The shelling continues. Another red flash and engine number 2 is dead. Another shell goes straight through the left wing before exploding further above. And on the right, engine number 4 is damaged and spins wildly out of control. Charlie fights the controls to keep it from ripping off the wing. But yet another shell rips through the roof. Charlie's main focus, though, is now on keeping the plane straight, as the command to drop the bombs comes over through the radio. The pub gives a big kick as the heavy cargo falls on the smoking city down below. It's time to head.
Okay, so think about that for a second, right? You're flying along. And this is where I just, I can't wrap my brain around it, which is why, you know, I never served. Thankfully, it wasn't forced. But, you know, you're going through and boom, you now got this ice wind minus 60 degrees. That ability to see, to be able to think clearly, right, to stay on path, to, you know, listen for the orders, to drop the bombs, you know, knowing then that you've got this other engine and you're just trying to keep that straight trajectory to be able to hit your target. Wow.
At home, the bomber formation turns back towards the North Sea. But the danger hasn't passed. They are still over enemy territory. Charlie's crew frantically scan the sky for enemy fighters, but the sky is empty of them. Not just the enemies, though, also their own.
Look to the right and then look again. I see the enemy in the eye. No bullets fly.
I need to go back on that because
They are still over enemy territory. Charlie's crew frantically scan the sky for enemy fighters, but the sky is empty of them. Not just the enemies, though, also their own.
okay, so their own fighters.
Look again. I see the enemy in the eye. No bullets fly. Spared by his mercy. Escorted out of harm's way.
Now, none of the bombers have made the run unscathed, but the pub and the bomber beside them are seriously damaged. Charlie can see that the other plane is in bad shape, smoke pouring from two engines and dangerously losing height. The pub itself stays up, but is reduced to two functional engines, and both planes have fallen way behind as their formation has flown on ahead.
Okay.
The other plane dives to try and put out its fire. It disappears behind some clouds, and suddenly a red flash catches Charlie's eyes. The other plane is gone. His co-pilot cries out. Dark gray shapes appear on the horizon. It's a squadron of Focke-Wulf 190s closing fast. At the same time, a group of Messerschmitt 190s leap through the clouds below where the other B-17 has just disappeared. Charlie's men ready their machine guns as the two lead 190s aim for the pub's cockpit to take out the pilot and the controls in one attack. But Charlie turns and flies full speed toward the attackers, only presenting them the narrowest target while also shortening the distance between them. That catches the attackers off guard, and their bullets miss the cockpit and bounce off the plane's roof. Charlie's top gunner returns fire and hits a 190. It banks off on fire. The second 190 is hit by the nose gunner while trying to avoid collision. The Flying Fortress still has some fight in it. Now the 109s close from behind. The tail gunner tries to spin his guns, and nothing happens. The gun is frozen. Literally frozen. The winds blowing through the plane have now frozen the oiled gun. The attackers close in. The tail gunner signals Charlie, and he jerks the plane into a steep dive. Bullets ricochet off the frame, penetrating the glass of the ball turret beneath the plane and cutting off half of the rudder. The radio operator calls out for help, but gets only static. Bullets have pierced the radio. 20mm shells have punched through the plane and severely wounded many crew members. The tail gunner is now dead, and all of them are affected by the frost. Charlie fights just to keep the ruin of his plane in the air. Only one gun is still operable. Another attack, and the cockpit is hit, puncturing Charlie's oxygen tank. Tipping to the left, the bomber spirals out of control. Faster and faster, it spirals downwards. Gasping for air, Charlie tries to get control, but the loss of the rudder makes that virtually impossible. Upside down, Charlie's vision fades.
I just, there's no words for it because, you know, you hear the stories of war all the time, but they're always given from a high level about, you know, they went and invaded this or they did that. And that's what I really enjoy about the Sabaton histories. They go down into those details of things that, you know, not only that you've never heard before, but then the details of these stories. And so, you know, they're giving this view, right? And going upside down and passing out, right? I mean, and that's really what they kind of talked about before. Oh, it blows my mind.
As the bomber plunges towards the city of Oldenburg, Charlie comes to. The lower altitude has more oxygen. Immediately, he hauls on the controls, fighting the plane with all of his strength. At just 3,000 feet, under 1,000 meters, He pulls it out of its dive. Right above the houses of Oldenburg, the plane is even close enough to shear shingles off the roofs. Charlie manages to pull the plane back up. At least what's left of it. Most of the crew is wounded or unconscious, only able now to fly 135 miles per hour, 217 kilometers per hour. To escape back to England, they will have to break through the German lines again. The dreaded Atlantic Wall, Germany's fortified coastline with the best anti-aircraft gunners in the world. Charlie makes clear that anyone can choose to bail out. Being a POW is still better than being shot to pieces, but his men refuse. Eyes fixed to the north, they fly past the Jever airfield, where German fighter ace Franz Stigler is about to start his engine. Just a day earlier, he brought down a B-17, and shooting down another one makes him eligible for the Knight's Cross. To Franz, though, this medal means more than just an award for being a killing machine. It means that there is sense behind his fighting, and that he has done his duty for his countrymen. He has seen firsthand what the bombers have done to cities like Hamburg and Bremen, reducing them to rubble. But his fight is not about hatred or revenge. It's about duty and survival. Franz Stigler learned his craft during his service in the Libyan desert, where he flew with the Knights of the Desert and their star fighter ace Hans-Joachim Marseille. He has lost a brother to the war, he has seen the destruction of the Africa Corps, and then was caught up in the desperate fight for Sicily under Adolf Galland. He would earn his Knight's Cross by shooting down the flying fortress that appears now before him. He begins his attack run. But with his finger on the trigger and the enemy rear in sight, he does not shoot. Something stops him, a feeling that something is not right. The lack of fire from the other plane makes him curious, and it is then he spots the damage the enemy plane has taken. He flies closer and pulls up alongside.
Okay, so that in perspective is just insane because, you know, he's got the right mindset. And what I mean by that is duty and service for your country, right? We can't put ourselves in that because we're not, you know, alive during that time and definitely not under the reign that he was under. But knowing that you could take them out, right? Knowing that it was damaged, knowing that something just wasn't right, it mattered to him. That's where it gets from a psychological aspect, right? I mean, and y'all should know me by now. I like the psychology of it. That from a psychological standpoint just is fascinating to me of what made it different to him to where he didn't. And they talk about where he, you know, saw the crew members and looked into the eyes, you know, and I'm sure they'll get to that in a second, but just still, that's the enemy. And your job and your service to your country is to take out that enemy. Yeah.
Stunned by the condition of the plane and how it is still able to even fly. The only gun not destroyed is the ball turret below, but it cannot elevate its guns high enough to harm Stigler.
I saw the tail gunner wasn't there because the guns were hanging down. Half the tail was missing on the left-hand side, practically no tail at all.
Franz knows that a few shots are enough to bring this contraption down, but there is little glory to him in shooting down a bunch of helpless men, even though their bombs have quite likely just killed his countrymen. He draws up right by the pub's cockpit. Now, Charlie's eyes are still fixed on the horizon, thinking of the flak guns of the Atlantic Wall, when suddenly a Messerschmitt appears right next to him. Imagine how that felt.
I look out the right window, and there parked on my right wing is a German Bf-109. And so I sort of closed my eyes and shook my head as you would with a nightmare. And if I close my eyes and open them again, he'll be gone. Well, I opened them again, and he was still there.
Well, Franz waves at Charlie and points down, signaling that they should land, knowing that they stand no chance against the Atlantic Wall. Charlie shakes his head, and Franz knows that they are dead men unless he helps them. so he stays with them as they fly towards the Atlantic Wall. See, the experienced German spotters on the ground will easily recognize one of their own. So, as they fly across the AA guns, not a single one opens fire. Franz will wonder his whole life what the spotters think of that scene in the sky that day. As they pass unscathed, Charlie does not understand nor see what Franz has done to help him until Franz Stigler salutes, then banks away. And only as he salutes does Charlie understand. The pub makes it back to England.
That's where it gets emotional. Think about that moment, right? He had a chance to get what was take the war out of the picture, but take what was his, right? But being such a noble guy, he said there's no honor in killing these men that are helpless. And he could have just said goodbye and let the AA guns, the anti-aircraft guns, take him out. But he made a note to say to himself he couldn't do that and to help them. Yeah, that will...
England, barely. And it is a small miracle that it manages a landing. The commanding officer is about to award them medals for their service this day, but High Command gets wind of the story, how a German fighter pilot saved their lives, and High Command is furious. No one can know. The mission never happened. Everything is swept under the rug. Charlie and his crew are outraged, but that is that. Franz lands safely near Bremen, but he as well can tell no one what he has just done. This could get him court-martialed. Well, it could get him killed.
If someone had seen him and reported him, it could have been a death sentence, a double. So he had the double impact.
Well, the story may have just disappeared into the mists of time. But according to the book A Higher Call, in 1985, Boeing invited old fighter pilots to the 50th anniversary of the B-17. His first flights were back in 1935. Franz Stigler was by then living in Vancouver, Canada. He was in attendance as pretty much the only German pilot and was interviewed by a local TV station, and he told his story. Charlie, the same year, wrote to that old German flying ace Adolf Galland and the German magazine Jagerblatt trying to find out who his German savior was. It took until 1990 until they truly found each other and met in person after letters and phone calls. Their startling story got worldwide attention. But even after that, even so long after the war, Franz would receive calls from Germany calling him a traitor. While some Canadian neighbors shunned him as a Nazi, Franz always responded, they would never understand.
Franz, what were your feelings when you met again for the first time?
I was so happy as we met that I dropped him and hugged him. Wasn't easy.
It was like meeting a family member, a brother that you haven't seen for 40 years. That's about as close as I can come.
So, how did you hear this story in the first place?
As usual, we are looking on the internet for ideas all the time. And I stumbled about a very beautiful picture, which is a painting of two airplanes. And the picture is the front cover artwork of a book written by an American author called Adam Makos from Valor Studios. Right. When I saw this picture, I was like, what's the story behind it? And then starting to read, and it was like, wow, this is a great story, and this is something we can do a song about. When we released the song, it was really interesting that I was contacted by a woman called Jovita Stigler.
Stigler. Okay.
And this is obviously the daughter of Franz Stigler.
Franz Stigler.
She wrote to me saying that her son, who's a fan of Sabaton, just found out that we wrote a song about his grandfather.
Wow.
We had just announced a tour where we were traveling in North America. And her family was based in Vancouver in Canada. Okay. And as we arrived there, we met with them.
That's really awesome, though. I love the little bits of these stories, like when you met Audie Murphy's family, when you meet the descendants and stuff.
I'm pausing it there because it just shows you the power of one person. you know, of hearing something or seeing something and saying something and it turning into something bigger. You know, when he saw this picture on the internet and he could have easily just kept going, right? But he saw it and he's like, he goes and reads the story and he's like, we could do a song. And that song creates this other generation that now sees it. You know, much like a lot of their songs, right? I mean, it's not just this one. But it truly shows you, no matter what your creative level is, that if you see something that inspires you, do something. And that's what I get from it, you know, just this message. And I know that's not what they're portraying here, but that's just something that I'm taking away from it is when you feel inspired, do something.
Like that.
It's when our songs become so personal and when we get emotional about them because we also know that what we are doing is the right thing to do. The song No Bullets Fly
I guess I beat you
from
to
the
it.
album Heroes. And here we are referring to Franz Stigler because he had the opportunity to shoot down an enemy, but he didn't because, yeah.
And that is heroism. You don't need your medals. Just that is the essence of honor. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's No Bullets Fly.
And this is Sabaton history. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the Sabaton History channel, check out World War II, Time Ghost, and don't forget to support the Patreon because that's really what makes this happen.
All right. You know, it's... There's no words to describe that emotion, right? Because the song itself, when you watch the lyric video and you kind of get the gist of what they're talking about, it brings up a lot of emotions in itself. But then when you get to the bigger story, you know, that sometimes it just doesn't cover. Now, y'all had given me a lot of background on this, so a lot of this I already knew. But it's the look in, you know, Charlie's eyes and in Franz's eyes. And as the song says, a short salute, then departed. You know, escort to safety out of the kill zone. And they just don't make people like that anymore. That's the best way to put it. Let me switch it back. I'll give you my final thoughts. I knew this was going to be an emotional one, and obviously it was. The situation, when you think about it, it is just unfathomable to a lot of people because we're not put in those situations. And to make a judgment call like that, you know, on that magnitude is still astounding to me. And, you know, he deserved any medal for true honor and bravery, not in the sense of the war, but in right versus wrong. And, you know, he could have, as he said, it would be like shooting a parachute. You know, that plane was so badly damaged that a few shots would have taken it out, a few well-placed shots. And same thing with the AA guns, right? The anti-aircraft would have taken one or two shots, if even that, you know, to bring that plane down and score a win in the battle. But for him to sit there and make that judgment call, and we're not talking about, you know, a 20-minute discussion inside his head. This was, I see this plane and something's not right. You know, the tail gun is hanging down. You know, something is not right. And he pulls up closer and he sees the damage and he understands, okay, this thing is going to do it. And he gave them that opportunity of pointing down, land the plane, surrender, and as Charlie said, being a POW, is better than death. And so for him to say, no, I've got to go, after his men said, and he listened, Franz had that choice. He could have left them right there and let the A's take care of him, knowing that they would have, right? He would have been none the wiser, assumed they were shot down, and gone on with his life. But he made a judgment call that said, let me protect them, right? And he knew. And obviously with the spotters, they knew it was one of theirs, but they didn't know, I would highly suspect they couldn't tell whose plane it was, etc. Obviously, they didn't know until it came out. But they made a choice to not shoot. And so to make it and him bank back, land and not tell anybody for so long, yeah, that's just insane to me. It's an amazing video. The history is just as amazing. The song itself, it speaks for itself. It's an amazing song. It tells an amazing story. The lyric video was great. It's Sabaton. I expect nothing less. Anyway, that's going to do it for this history. Yeah. There's a couple more that I'm looking forward to. I'm definitely want to see Attack of the Dead Men and Father. And there's a couple of Red Baron as well. I think Red Baron's next on Thursday. That I'm looking forward to going more into depth than just, the history that we've been taught through the song. So with that being said, let me give some shameless plugs as usual. If you liked the video, hit that like button. If you like the content I'm producing, hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. You know the story. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with Nightwish, Ginger, Sabaton, and a bonus video. Tuesday and Thursday, Mondays, Nightwish, Sabaton, and Ginger with a bonus video. Tuesdays, Sabaton history, and now the warning. Wednesdays is Nightwish, Sabaton, Ginger, and a bonus video. Thursday is another Sabaton history and the warning. Friday is Free for All Friday, day by day recap. So hit that subscribe button. It says that 90% of the people watch my video with the 6,000 returning users aren't subscribed. Hit the subscribe button. It's no cost to you, but it just helps reaffirm that the content I'm putting out is of your time and my time, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm humbled already by the support and the amazing conversations I've seen in the comments section. Even when we disagree, it's done respectfully, which is exactly what's missing in this world. So it truly has restored my faith in humanity just from this channel alone. So let's keep the support going. Let's grow the community, but I can't do that without y'all. Till then, my friends, always remember, if someone asks you to stop what you're doing, don't ask for 1, don't ask for 2, and certainly don't ask for 5. Someone asks you to stop what you're doing, always ask for just 10 more minutes. I'm JTMM. I'm out.